some pretty high expectations, whether you are in Sanford or whether you're in Jordan Hare, for the Dogs defense, as far as when Kirby Smart is at the helm, or as long as he's at the helm, I should say. So in a post-game press conference right after that UAB game, he said, quote, "I think we've got a good defense. I don't know if it's great. So for you guys, what will it take for Georgia's defense to move from good to great?"
Health is first and foremost.
Yeah, indeed.
I mean, two of your best 4 players on defense didn't play a week ago.
Yeah.
And really, when you look at Michael Williams, he hasn't really had to play a ton of snaps this year thus far. I'd like to see him get Trayvon Walker-esque numbers of snaps and see what he could actually do when you let him play consistently. And I think you're going to see more and more of that as we move forward. But I think health is one. And honestly, I don't know that you're going to get great from this defense, like shut down great. And you're not going to truly know, I think, until SEC championship, potentially playoff, whatever down the road, because the best quarterback you may see on your schedule, you've already played. Now, road environments there, but like good to great, I don't know that we're going to see it, because I don't know that you're not seeing Jalen Carter, you're not seeing Jordan Davis, you're not seeing Nolan Smith. Like those guys don't necessarily exist on this defense, or if they do, they're young and not necessarily getting the reps yet. So it might be just really good. And by the way, really good is still going to be just fine, I think, for their schedule moving forward.
And I think to add to that, what Brent was saying, like you said, like we don't see 6 doggone potential first round draft picks on this defense, right? You know, so like they don't have the 5-star guys that have kind of come to fruition and, you know, all together, right? When they're that same class, like they might have those guys, but I feel like we're not going to see that until next year because of just how the numbers game work with them having so many talented guys on the roster. It's just kind of hard to highlight those guys, you know, on a weekly basis. So I think that it's going to be really hard for them to get to that great status because the standard is so high, right? Like Kirby Smart is obviously home defensive coordinator. You know, Will Muschamp and Glenn Schumann, they're obviously co-defensive coordinators. So those guys are defensive-minded guys. So that standard is going to be much, much higher than you would have on any other SEC roster, I feel like, in this conference. So, and then you talk about the competition. Like, when you really going to know? Like you said, SEC championship, playoff, like, because I think right now it's just kind of like, I feel like this defense is going to cater to their competition, like, and that's not necessarily a good thing once you get later on in the season. But I think that's what we're seeing now, like Dumas Johnson, like he hasn't played like what I saw him in the time that he got last year. He hasn't played like that guy. I don't see that guy on the field this year, and he even said it as such himself. He's like, I don't feel like I'm playing up to my standard. And I think that's going to take, stepping into that leadership role, being a little bit more vocal, getting a guy like Jovan Bullard back. And that's when I feel like you'll start to at least make steps towards being great. But I feel like I'm with Brent. I don't feel like you're going to necessarily get there this year because just from a reps and number standpoint, I just don't see it happening.
Yeah, I doubled down, and I'm going to triple down now. I've said this in years prior. Statistically, the last 2 years, Georgia defense were amazing, amazing things. I think this year, I said before the season, they were unreal. They were historic numbers, and they played 2 years ago. It was a hockey line rotation. Last year, it was kind of the simple guys. You knew who was going out there. This year's more hockey line. If you watch what Kirby's done, he's played 18-year-old kids a ton this year. Aguero's back there just out of high school, safety position, forced into action because we were down a couple safety injuries. You talked about injuries. I think this defense can be great. And I'm going to do the dudes, and then I'm going to do the coach speak. The dudes are, again, Michael Williams is going to be the best pass rusher in the SEC by the end of this year. He's going to get those reps. It's going to come because games are going to be a little tighter than the UAB game. And come the second half, Kirby's not going to do the hockey line change, getting reps for guys, because he's not suffering from, hey, I got to play now, or I'm going to go elsewhere. He's like, great, I'll play you. I'll give up 21 points to UAB if it means that you play and you're here and you develop. So that's what he's doing there. Second thing, I think the rotation at offensive line is going to get settled out, but defensive linebacker as well will get sorted out. I think I saw Chaz Chambliss. Oh my gosh, last game was his best game he's had all year. He set that edge. He's not a great pass rusher, but man, he set that edge. That third down, Kamari Lassiter is that dude. I think as we see more games that are going to be competitive, He's going to show out his pass cover skills, his tackling ability on the run, and the screens are his next level. I love him. DeAndre Baker-esque with that. So I think we can ascend to the best defense in SEC. I really, really do. I think we can get there. Now, the problem is, can the guys get healthy? Can they come back? And the last thing, the coach speak. Kirby did come out and say, hey, we're good. We're not great. Go back every single year. Week 4. This is the Kirby script. I'm not kidding you. He does this every single year. And his way to motivate his players, his way to back them, he says, he's not going to say, well, they're trash. It's like, no, they're good. We can do better. It's Kirbinese, as we call it on our podcast. We speak Kirbinese really well. We've seen this every single year. They can be great, and he knows that, and he's leading them that way. So I think by the end of the year, we could be the best defense in the SEC. Best nationally, I don't know. Penn State has something to say about that. That's a ludicrous defense, but I think we could be top 5, top 3 easily.
And I think your red zone is a part of that in Georgia improving overall, right? Because when you look at before the UAB game, 13 for 16 in the red zone with 9 touchdowns, opponents 4 for 4. But then you look at the UAB game, 6 for 6 touchdowns in the red zone. UAB, of course, went 3 for 4. But the most important thing is you're seeing more of what you want to see as far as Georgia scoring. So with that in mind, do you guys feel like you're going to continue to see that efficiency and effectiveness in the red zone based on how you're seeing them stack things week by week?
Yeah, I think from a communication standpoint, that's what matters when you get down in the red zone, because windows get tighter, coverages get tighter, the spacing starts to matter a little bit more because of, whether you're on offense or defense. And I think that right now, as long as they're continuing to communicate with each other and you start to get some of those guys back that we talked about as far as being leaders on this squad, I think it can't do nothing but get better because of the level of talent that they've had out. And once you start implementing those guys back into the lineup, I feel like it's gonna do nothing but grow.
Yeah.
One big thing there is, I think, Lawson Lucky, when he comes back and starts getting as part of the rotation, that's going to even more so add to some of the red zone game, because now you can I think he's going to play the snaps and be the sort of true blocking tight end that you saw in the past from Darnell Washington. He gets snaps. Now you add some running game effectiveness to the fact that you already also have 19, i.e. Brock Bowers, on the field. I don't worry about them sort of in the red zone whatsoever as they move forward, mainly because you've seen the propensity even the last 2 weeks. Bowers had 9 targets the last 2 weeks each game. That's the most he's had ever, other than one game, the SEC championship game in 21, when he had 15 targets. Outside of that, these last 2 games, most time you're seeing him get the ball. The more he gets the ball, the better your offense is.
That's exactly right. Yeah, this offense, I think, and this is going to be ludicrous because people are going to look at the pedestrian first half starts, first quarter starts, and going to think I'm crazy. We got a guy, Dog Stats, over on Twitter, does some amazing metric stuff, and he does expected yards per play, and explosiveness and efficiency, boils it down, gives us some metrics to go on. Georgia's offense is the 7th best offense by expected yards per play and explosiveness. Now, other teams ahead of them, Oregon, Washington, USC, Oklahoma, Miami, Kansas, Louisville, which is kind of crazy to me, as well. But then there's Georgia right after that. And Mike Bobo is cooking something up. We are hitting our shots again. Arian Smith catches that ball. Ra catches a couple passes, and it's different. It just is a different statistical game, and the explosiveness only goes up. I think offensively, we have our identity. Don't give me Cash Jones is good for a couple things. A little wheel route. I love Cash on the wheel route, but don't ask him to go in between the tackles like Edwards. But man, I really think this offense is finding its groove, and Carson Beck is coming into his own. That intermediate pass game, those digs and those 15 yards, all that, he is zipping it down there. And we saw him get some touch on the sideline passes, deep ball, and all of a sudden you accentuate that game with number 19 with Brock and with Cash doing the wheel and all of this. Oh man. Rosemy Jack Saint, by the way, welcome to the show, young man. Like, way to ball out and way to get there. He is now a weapon and a dude I want to see take, maybe if Arian can't be the speedster, breakaway on that play action that you mentioned earlier. A name to watch out, CJ Smith, young kid, but can fly down the field, and I would like to see him there.
So, Clint, you actually just segued into something we talked about last week, but we want to pull you in first, and then I'll get my guys with their word from last week as well. So, Clint, last week we played the game. You said it, identity. So we talked about what that one word would be. Now, I'll stretch it for you because Jarvis stretched it to a phrase, but one word identity for you this week now that you've seen the Dogs in action for 4 weeks.
I think this is the adolescent is going to be the word. Now, adolescent means this: we're transitioning. It's the DNA is there, right? When you're an adolescent, like your DNA is there. You feed it, it's going to grow to what your potential is going to be. You malnourish it, it's going to be a little, but the DNA is there for the Dogs defense and for the Dogs offense. And we just went through our adolescent phase. We just went through some growing pains, some cramps in the middle of the night that wakes you up as a 13-year-old, and you're like, "What's going on? We're really suffering." And all of a sudden, you ball out, and you're like, "Oh, this is our potential. This is our floor and where the ceiling can go." So I'm gonna use the word adolescent, and not in a negative way, not immature, but growing through. These are just young kids. And look at, you guys mentioned it earlier, you're replacing so many folk, offensive line injury, defensive injury, and we're still there's two teams that scare me in all of college football. It's Oregon and Washington scare me because those dudes know how to play ball on offense, and they got legit defense. USC don't, because they just went down to the desert and got absolutely handled by a team that shouldn't even, whatever. Caleb Williams, sure, good on you, but no one else. Now, if we're saying the Dogs are growing, are ascending, and we're still third best team, I still think we're the best team, but top three, and we're only growing right now. Ooh, so I'll use adolescent as a way to say, no. There's so much more meat on the bone to expand.
And Brent, your word last week was unknown. What you got this week for the identity?
Stays the same.
Same.
Because you've played 4 home games. You were down at half of one, and you took care of business there. Great sort of mental and also execution-based comeback. It's just, hey, now can you go on the road? Can you handle adversity on the road? And also, you haven't seen the quarterback really truly have adversity yet. How does he handle adversity? Like, there's still, to me, a lot of unknown with this team.
That's a good point. How does he handle the hostile environment? That's where you start to see whether you stay in that adolescent space or whether, that's where you start to show us if you're ready and if you're mature. Now, Jarvis, you gave us figure it out last week. The identity going into this week's game against Auburn.
Sustainability. Can you sustain what we saw last week? I like what I saw. You got the ball in your playmaker's hand. Like, make it simple. Like my former defensive coordinator, I used to write up on the board when we opened up training camp. He would write on the board, KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. Like it's not football is not hard. Like okay, how are we gonna be better on offense? How are we gonna get out to a better start? Put the ball in our playmakers' hands, and I want to continue to see Mike Bobo do those things. So, and they can sustain what we saw last week. I think they'll be totally fine.
And my word last week was incomplete. So now I want to say that they are evolving.
I think that's
fair.
It. Very fair.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah.
That's my word. So, here at the Dog Party, we are always evolving as well, kind of expanding and exposing our reach. And one of the things we like to do, Clint called it out, so I'm going to call it back, and Jarvis is going to tell you about it, and that is using subtext to connect.
Absolutely, folks. How about you join the cool kids? You've been kind of wandering around trying to figure out, like, where I'm going to get some information about the Falcons. Where I'm going to get some insider stuff about the Georgia Bulldogs. Like, all you got to do is hit that link. It's right there in the description on YouTube and in the podcast description as well, or wherever you download your podcast. So make sure you join the Locked On Sports Atlanta subtext by pounding that link in the description on YouTube and wherever you download your podcast.